Hey, I'm Martin Schneider, Constellation Research's VP and Principal Analyst, covering CRM, revenue technologies, growth technologies, all kinds of awesome stuff.
And I'm Larry Dignan, Editor-in-Chief of Constellation Insights, and we're your co-hosts for CRTV episode 91.
Wow, 91.
91,
Close
go
to 100.
figure. It doesn't have the same ring as 90, but it'll get there. We're on our way to 100.
Yep.
And we're here to talk about the latest news and trends in enterprise tech. And then after the news, Doug Henschen will recap his latest happenings with Teradata. So on to the news. Martin, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so a somewhat interesting announcement from Microsoft. Everybody's in on the Agentic AI train, right? But what's interesting is, Microsoft has had the copilots for a long time, so they're really building on an interesting foundation. They put out some cool copilot studios and one of the first to do that. And then they even had some agent studio tools before, but now they're really getting into that autonomous agent side of things. And this week they've announced 10 out-of-the-box agents that cover a wide gamut of use cases: sales development reps, lead development, a lot of that kind of CRM stuff. A lot of great stuff for customer service inside the call center, and bringing more of the case resolution process, automating a lot of that and bringing autonomous agents. But a really interesting wrinkle, and one we haven't seen much of yet, is with their ERP portfolio of products, bringing ERP kind of agent use cases, right? To really, for those overworked, understaffed G&A teams and finance teams, really trying to take out a lot of the minutiae of like very common, very often the same repeated tasks inside the world of finance and bookkeeping and just everything around ERP. And it's a really cool concept in my mind because, this is the real no-brainer, because for two reasons. One is the things that are getting automated are very known, very repeatable, and kind of happen almost at the same time and in the same process, or at least order of workflow. So really easy to kind of get that right. But then the ERP data is typically way more higher quality, or at least more complete, than when you're thinking about front office data like CRM data and other systems. Because with the CRM, no one gets fired, at least not immediately, when the CRM data isn't perfect. But if the ERP's data isn't great, someone might get fired, someone might go to jail, right? So you're really working with a much more interesting data set. So I'm really excited about that. Now, that they're not the only people doing it too. SAP last week also made an interesting announcement that they're putting more agent AI on top of their ERP set. So I love that, it's not just the cool, sexy sales and marketing and the customer service guys that we're looking at that CX side of it, really taking the back office into play, because there's a lot of real slam dunks to be had there in bringing agent AI to the fore. So really excited to see those two developments from those two big guys happen this week.
Yeah, and what's really interesting to me is I think those back-end processes, I think that's where all the value is going to be.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just kind of like no-brainer stuff. Right. My only nitpick with all of this, and SAP seems to be doing it a little more than Microsoft, but when we had our briefing with Microsoft, it was, well, we're doing this ERP Copilot agent thing. And then I asked about Power Automate and the process mining stuff, and they acted, they were kind of like, well, that's a separate thing.
Yeah.
Where it's really not. I mean,
no, it shouldn't be. Yeah.
Yeah. The agents of the future are not only going to automate these workflows, but then they're going to come back to you and say, well, you could optimize this if you did X, Y, Z.
No, absolutely.
And that's where
that's the whole point, right? Is like, right. The first step is like, take out the minutia work to let the humans be strategic. And then it's like, allow that, where's that strategic kind of help coming from, right? Because they know more than ever what the actual flows are, where the data is, what the white space is, what the gaps are, what are the bottlenecks, what are these things, right? So I'm looking at, when I think of ERP and as it kind of tentacles into supply chain and order management and all these things, the amount of efficiency that can be gained that a human just doesn't have the scale to like look at it at, that kind of data sets. Really, really cool stuff. So when they join that all together, that's going to be really, really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, all these agents really have to do is stop like duplicate invoices, close accounts receivable faster, procure stuff faster and cheaper. and the value created is like off the charts.
Oh, it's absolutely huge. Yeah, when you look at when you look at AR and AP around that side of things, and just closing those gaps by 5, 10, 15%, the resource allocation that you get from that, and the cost savings, the cash flow, it's just so amazing. And that's, again, it's not, and you're not taking away humans out of the equation by any stretch of the imagination. But with the other side of things, you almost, in some ways, you are running the risk of obviating like the human touch element if you're automating it out, right? So it's, you want to let humans be more strategic in the back office, not worry about minutia, and it's a perfect use case. On the front, you got to be careful, right? So it's kind of exciting to see these use cases springing out of the box as well, because now they're easy buttons to get started. And it's, the data's better, so you're probably going to see better results earlier. Salesforce was talking about how the pace of agent AI, and again, take this with a grain of salt, because a lot of it is, again, the ease of creating them versus the value they're getting. But they're saying, the uptake in agent AI is far outpacing even co-pilots. So are these things way more valuable? I don't know. They definitely are easy to create, so I don't know. But they're making it, they are making it really easy with these wizards and these building tools, these studios. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think we're going to have some orchestration layer and something to sort of coordinate all these things.
Yeah, because there's going to be a lot of crisscrossing, and that's, especially when you're in like multi-vendor environments, and it's like, well, who's pulling, and then what becomes, we always talked about from the data side, what is the truth, right? What is that version of truth? Well, what is the agent acting on that is the most true right now? Right. So the decision making by a machine has to be, because a lot of times you can look at data as a human and say, I think I can figure this out. But if the machine doesn't know, right? So the machine makes different kinds of decisions, let's say. So it will be really interesting when you talk about that, not having that orchestration layer versus having that to validate and to understand and to timestamp and do all these types of interesting things. So it's going to be pretty wild.
And I think it's also, I guess that brings me to I've been cloud hopping, basically. I went to a AWS Generative AI Analyst Summit. A lot of it was NDA, but did have a few briefings on Q, which I think Amazon's still trying to figure out their, Q for business story a little bit.
Right.
But what's interesting along the agentic AI stuff is they're very horizontal about this. And I think that's where the whole agentic AI thing is going to get interesting, because is it about being vertical or is it about being horizontal? And are you going to need, horizontal stuff like an Amazon can do, because, they're neutral, they're across cloud. And is that going to be the way to go? Like, it's just so the talk there with the, at the AWS Gen AI Summit was, it was a lot of Q. I mean, it's obviously a lot of model choice and things like that. But I think where it gets interesting is sort of, is agentic a horizontal thing or a vertical thing? And a lot of software vendors are kind of looking at it in their narrow window. And I do wonder how it goes over the top.
Yeah, and I think we're going to need both, right? And that's because where it becomes interesting is when you look at the applicability of the use cases, they're almost endless, right? So when you think of like, where does Amazon come in? It's kind of the same idea as like you look at Service Cloud. Like Service Cloud's going to have lots of things in it for Salesforce, but they also leverage Amazon Connect for a lot of the CCaaS stuff, right? So it's the same idea, right? So when are you going to be using kind of like public? When are you going to be using your own? When are the use cases going to be more specific versus more horizontal and generic? But also it's like, again, what are even those broader use cases where, there's some, let's call it like data elements of Amazon, but then there's also just like, coding and using agentic AI to optimize operations, which isn't really in the app layer, right? So you need that higher level stuff, and Amazon's going to have to provide that to the DevOps crew of the world that's living on Amazon. So the use cases are going to be varied, and I think there's no one size fits all agentic AI. There's no one AI. There's no, it's going to be hybrid. It's going to be myriad. It's going to be multi-model, multimodal. So everyone's going to have theirs, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing worth noting is on the agentic front, like none of these folks seem to have the same definition.
No, because I think they're looking at it's the blind man and the elephant, right? Like,
Right.
because when you look at what does Amazon care about, they're not really into that application game for the most part, right? The closest they get to that is with like CCAS and Connect, and they're usually running under someone else's stuff. They're plumbing, right? So again, they're looking at what the agents need to do or should be doing versus what Salesforce or even Microsoft or SAP think about. Really different, you know. So it's going to be really broad. It's really going to be varied, and I think that's kind of cool. But it's also it's hard for people like us to follow it all.
Well, yeah, with earnings season coming up, I'll be doing a lot of searches for Agentic to see how much software.
It'll be the buzzword in every 10K, right?
Yeah, it's probably going to be 30 words a conference call now. Is my guess. That's kind of the over-under.
That's the over-under.
30 words. So the other thing I went to was the Google Public Sector Summit in DC. And really interesting in the number of power players. Like, I'm kind of used to the tech bros, the millionaire types. Not necessarily used to being around a bunch of generals that have access to press buttons and blow things up. So it was pretty interesting. And I think what's interesting about Google Public Sector is that it's only really 2 years old. And they basically set it up as an independent unit. So they run on Google Cloud, they have access to all that technology, but it's kind of like the only independent thing that's completely like walled off and independent.
Yeah, like break off a GPC environment, but just for the public sector, right?
Totally. And they're getting these use cases, and it's just kind of fascinating to watch. So I posted on the Constellation Insights. There's a bunch of takeaways. Posted a thing from the General of the Space Force, which, definitely slide of the day. He had basically what they were tracking in space in 2008 versus what they're tracking now.
It's got to be insane.
It's pretty ridiculous.
There's so much stuff in space.
Yeah, and there's exactly. There's less rocket launches now than there were before, but they were taking up 15 satellites.
The payloads are insane right now. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Yeah,
and it's just and it was just like trying to he was talking about doing like a uncontested service versus contested, and because everybody's fighting for space now.
Yeah,
and it's just fascinating to watch. But basically, the government is trying to leverage as much commercial stuff as they can. And
they have to, right? I mean, and the pace of innovation means they can't own it all. It can't be a vertical. We talk about vertically integrated. I mean, they can't just be doing it all. It's not gonna work if the government does it.
So the use cases they had were, pretty interesting across the board. It was just kind of interesting to watch because, like I said, I'm usually not around public sector sort of peeps, and definitely a different vibe. But the other thing that's interesting though is that Google Public Sector almost reminds me a little bit like Oracle, where they were kind of late to the game, yet that seems to be an advantage.
Yeah, it is. It is in a lot of ways. Yeah,
because the early movers, it was all about, well, we'll create you a government cloud.
Yeah,
and then the government said, well, we kind of want this. We want this walled off commercial cloud approach.
Yeah.
So Google being a little later to the game, now they're coming in on that AI layer, and it's kind of working out for them. It's very early. I mean, this unit's only 2 years old, but when you compare the traction in a year, it's definitely worth watching.
They've got a number of ways to get in there and make it worthwhile to be utilizing Google. So
it is interesting how much they're taking the Google Cloud and taking it basically off network into the edge. So they basically had this little mini.
Yeah, and that flexibility in Google's part is a big advantage, right? Over like AWS has some of that, sure, but like who else? Like even like Oracle's not really built for that yet. You know what I mean? Like to be doing it that much, right? Because they're kind of still going,
ACI
is
they're kind of built for that private sovereign AI sort of approach.
Yeah.
Which is also a big, huge bucket of money. But, I think when you boil this down, like even the cloud providers, when it comes to some of these use cases, are going to be very on-prem, right? Yeah. It's going to be, here's your instance, here's your cloud in a box kind of thing, and it's going to be yours, and they'll manage it or whatever. But a lot of the stuff's really going to look on-prem.
Yeah, it's everything old is new again, right?
Right, exactly. So. All right, so that's all we have for the news. Next up, we have Doug Henschen. He's going to recap the latest with Teradata. Interesting story there. It's kind of old school looking, new school-ish. Yeah, it looks pretty interesting. And then to close out the show, I'll interview SuperNova finalist Jaime Zepeda from Ring Container. We'll talk about IoT and some of the stuff he's doing, a lot of RPA work that's built into ERP. It's like the ERP episode. Very weird.
Hey, Doug Henschen and Constellation Research here at the Teradata Possible event in Los Angeles, where the keynote is just wrapping up. They made two big announcements: a bring your own large language model offering that'll bring Hugging Face models into the Teradata platform, and also an NVIDIA partnership that will make GPU processing capacity available for Gen AI initiatives. Here's a closer look.
Teradata's announcements were first mentioned by CEO Steve McMillan during his keynote address. McMillan highlighted the company's shift during his 4-year tenure to becoming a cloud-first software company with platform-as-a-service offerings on AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. The company now has more than $500 million in annually recurring cloud revenue, about 1/3 of its total revenue. Teradata has extended its long-available bring-your-own model option for in-database processing of conventional AI and machine learning models to small language models and other types of small models suitable for Gen AI. The new Bring Your Own LLM option will enable customers to run small and mid-sized models in-platform on Teradata using container services. The emphasis is on open source options that can run on Teradata using conventional CPU processing power at much lower cost than large model alternatives. The third option of tapping into model endpoints using APIs is for those truly large models that might require GPU acceleration. Teradata rivals like Snowflake and Databricks have already introduced their own comparatively tiny model libraries, but rather than take a Me Too approach, Teradata has focused on working with Hugging Face, which gives customers more than 300,000 model options. To my mind, this should be called a Bring Your Own XLM offering, because the in-platform option is best suited to small and mid-sized models and to any model type, including audio, video, and other options, not just to language models. Teradata has already curated a list of about a dozen small open source models that have proven to run cost effectively on its platform and that are tied to a growing list of use case specific solutions harnessing Gen AI. The first 4 use case specific Gen AI solutions that Teradata has introduced address customer complaint analysis, regulatory compliance, product recommendations, and healthcare doctor note analysis, all of which take advantage of Gen AI's strengths such as text summarization and sentiment analysis. These 4 initial solutions include model recommendations and workflows combining Gen AI and more conventional analyses supported by the Teradata ClearScape portfolio. The good news is that Teradata is promising more of these solutions and additional supporting content, such as solution blueprints, code scripts, and best practices documentation. Teradata's new partnership with NVIDIA will bring a GPU acceleration option to Teradata Vantage Cloud Lake, starting on AWS in November and expected to extend to Azure and Google Cloud during the first half of 2025. GPU acceleration is a must-have capability for working with the largest of large models, so this is an option that Teradata simply had to add. Apparently customers agree, as I heard a hearty round of applause for this announcement at Teradata Possible LA. To sum up, Teradata's announcement at the Possible LA event will bring customers flexible model and processing options and new fast start Gen AI solutions. As a next step, we'd like to see programmatic integration between Hugging Face and Teradata ClearScape, eliminating manual model loading steps. We're also eager to see more solutions, deeper solution support, and GPU acceleration on all 3 major public clouds. This is Doug Henschen signing off from Teradata Possible LA.
Hi, I'm Larry Dignan with Constellation Insights, and we're here with Jaime Zepeda. He's from Ring Container Technologies Corp, and he is a SuperNova finalist. Congratulations, Jaime.
Thank you very much.
So let's just start high level. Walk me through what Ring does and the project overall.
Certainly. Ring Container Technologies is a privately held multinational corporation headquartered in Oakland, Tennessee. And we focus on manufacturing faster, lighter, and stronger packaging solutions for the food industry, some agricultural applications, and pet care. So if you've ever bought a jar of peanut butter at the supermarket, if you turn it over, on the bottom of the jar, there should be a Ring logo. If there isn't, you're buying the wrong peanut butter.
Nice. Well, I eat a lot of peanut butter, so I think we're probably good there. So walk me through the project. What problems were you trying to solve? And, how did you wind up using Infor to kind of solve some of your issues?
Yeah. So the problem is there are times when our customers call for a proof of delivery. In essence, when our truckloads are picked up by the carriers, we have a bill of lading document that the truck driver signs, taking ownership of the goods. So there are times when we have to provide the signed document to our customers, either our customer service group, sometimes even the finance team has to do that when there are disputes regarding invoices. The problem was that we have 20 different shipping sites throughout the world, and each shipping site would sometimes do things a little differently. These signed bill of lading documents were sometimes stored in a file cabinet. Sometimes they were stored in a box. Some of those shipping sites were scanning them to a PDF file and storing them on a user's laptop. At one site, we discovered that one of our users was using their personal phone to take pictures of the signed documents. So when it was time to provide our customer with this signed bill of lading, we would have to go to multiple different places and try to find this document. So we asked them is there a way that we can capture that signed document and have it linked directly in the Infor ERP with the corresponding transaction, that is the sales order that originated that shipment. And that is how we managed to solve this with Infor. They found a way for us to do all that using robotic process automation.
So how much process work did you have to do in terms of fact finding and, figuring out the different ways this process was being handled?
That was probably the most challenging piece is trying to gather everybody together and understand what we were doing. You think you know what you're doing, but you sometimes don't know. And then once we understood how the process was different at each site, we had to develop a way for each of the sites to somehow standardize their workflow. We didn't want to disrupt their workday. We wanted for it to be as minimally intrusive to our end users as possible. So the sites that were already scanning to digital file, they were the easiest ones because all we had to do was just retrieve those digital files from a shared directory. At sites where they're not necessarily capturing a digital copy, it was either we began by having them email the copy, and eventually we worked towards storing the copy on a shared directory so the RPA process could retrieve those files.
Now, did you look at other RPA vendors, or were you looking for something that integrated with your ERP system?
We did not look at other RPA vendors, even though there was at least one other one that contacted us while we already had the project underway. What we did search for was vendors that provided capture of an electronic signature, and we looked at some of their solutions, but it was too cumbersome for our end users, and it involved the truck drivers to have to deal with the digital copies. And well, the truck driver signs the piece of paper and they leave, and we didn't want to have to disturb them any more than necessary also, because it could create bottlenecks with our shipping processes.
So have you been able to standardize and automate this process?
At this point, we have found a way that is easily reproducible at our shipping sites. Again, the only thing that we now require is that our end users scan the signed documents to a PDF file. And not every site has the same scanning device. So that's probably the only deviation. But we've basically narrowed it down to scanning the signed document to a shared directory, and the M4 RPA processes then query those directories, and they parse the PDF file, extract the necessary data, and link that document to the corresponding transaction in the M4 ERP.
So was this process, in terms of returns, was it more about time savings or money or both?
It was probably more about time savings. I don't necessarily get to look at all the numbers myself with respect to dollar figures and salaries and so forth. But the time savings was in the fact that our users were no longer having to deal with minutia, and instead we're concentrating on manufacturing product for our customers. We're already a pretty lean enterprise, so we don't have a whole lot of users doing a lot of the work. So anytime that our users are distracted from manufacturing packaging solutions, it's costly because we're having to, our users are having to not make bottles, as opposed to that's what they're there for, to make bottles.
Okay. What process are you looking at? Other processes and where RPA can come in handy?
Yes, we've been trying to find a way for RPA to probably automate payables. We still receive a lot of invoices via email, and they may or may not contain an attached PDF of the invoice. So that's one challenge that we've got, for the future to resolve. And another challenge is we're hoping RPA can help us to integrate data collected from processes external to the ERP.
Oh, okay. So you're planning on broaden this out to other processes that may not be touched to Infor?
That's correct. Hopefully we can use the M4 RPA solutions to integrate non-M4 processes and send data to the ERP.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Well, that is a wrap on episode 91 of CRTV. Made it to 91. Watch for our next episode in 2 weeks, which I guess will be 93.
Look at us. We can count.
I'm doing the math. I'm realizing we're not going to get to do number 100.
Yeah.
99 and 101.
Right. We're like 101. Jeez. What is this? We're like on the wrong side of the street. So that's right. So episode 92, co-hosts the Mueller, Holger, and Liz will be at you with episode 92. In the meantime, follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, at Constellation, and hashtag CRTV show. And don't forget to subscribe to CR Research TV on YouTube, subscribe to CR Insights, just subscribe to every damn thing we have. Thanks for watching. Hey.
Yo, let me get this picture centered. My desk is situated oddly in my corner. Hey there, this is Martin Schneider, Constellation Research's Vice President and Principal Analyst, covering revenue technology, CRM, all kinds of awesome stuff.
And I'm Larry Dignan, Editor-in-Chief of Constellation Insights, and we're your co-hosts for Constellation Research. Let's just do this shit all over again, shall we? Which will be next week, or 2 weeks. When is that again? We do this every 2 weeks? Is that what we do?
I think so.
All right. Hi, I'm Larry Dignan from Constellation Insights, and we're here with... Say that again. You need a reshoot.
Okay. I think I can cut it. I wouldn't say your strength is intros and conclusions, but you have a lot of other strengths, so...
It is not my... It is not... The intro conclusion is not my thing.
No.
I'm kind of like, okay, I'm done. Are we done? Yeah, we're done.
You
okay,
right
bye.
in. Yeah.
And yeah, I guess what do we have to do now?